For their annual employee party on July 24, 1915, Chicago-based company Western Electric hired 5 ships to carry workers from downtown Chicago across Lake Michigan to Michigan City, Indiana for the day. The steamship Eastland was the first ship scheduled to leave the dock from downtown Chicago. By 7 o'clock that morning, there was a band playing as the passengers boarded the Eastland. People boarding were shouting and waving to folks already on the ship. Some of the families with younger children immediately headed below decks, so the little ones couldn't wander off in the party-like atmosphere on the deck. Up top, folks were scrambling for seats and leaning on the rails to wave to the people still on the dock. By 7:15 a.m., the ship was filled to capacity, and though the passengers didn't notice, it had begun to list away from the wharf. The ship listed only slightly the first time, but things would soon get much worse. By 7:23 a.m., the Eastland began to list once again. Water started to enter the engine room, and some of the crew climbed up ladders to the main deck. Within a few more minutes, the ship was listing 45 degrees. Furniture began to slide, injuring passengers. Water poured through the portholes into the cabins below. These factors would lead to one of the worst shipwrecks in the history of the Great Lakes. The next time the Eastland started to list, she didn't stop. Still tied to the dock, the boat rolled slowly onto its side. People on deck were thrown into the river. Their clothes soon weighed them down, making it impossible to tread water. Folks below deck were trapped in their rooms as doors and passageways were blocked by shifting furniture. Passengers tried to make their way off the Eastland as water continued to pour into the ship. By 7:30, the Eastland had settled onto its side in 20 feet of water, still tied to the dock. The river was a mass of people trying to stay afloat. The air was filled with their shouting and screaming. In the end, 844 people died in the disaster, including 22 whole families. The dead were carried to the 2nd Regiment Armory, which had been turned into a makeshift morgue. The dead were lined up in rows so that family members could walk down the aisle to find their loved ones. The Eastland disaster remains one of the worst tragedies in Illinois history and one of the most catastrophic maritime disasters ever.